Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Artcasters number, what are we at? 221. And we've got an old familiar face. He's not old, but he's a familiar face. He's probably younger than at least younger than me. I don't know. But anyway, we'll get to Dan in a minute. Yeah, so we are back. We're going to be talking about improving your drawing skills. This is a topic that Dan said that he wanted to talk about. So we're going to get into that, and I know that's a topic a lot of people want to know about. So as usual, we kind of work our way around the room. If we got anything to promote, we'll do that, and then we'll get into our topic. So as far as me, you're on my channel, so you probably know who I am. If you come to this, if you're a member of Dan's community and this is your first introduction to the Artcasters, I'm Scott with Circworks Art Labs, and I do a series on YouTube called Making Comics 101, which is basically step-by-step, every step of the comic making process. I think right now we're at panels, and we've talked about everything from coming up with ideas to thumbnails, all that kind of stuff. And when we keep moving on until we eventually get to publishing and marketing our books and everything. So it's big series, about 3 videos a week. So if you're into comics, and I know Dan's a comic book artist, so if you do come here from Dan's channel, you might be interested in that. And then, like I said, we also promote anything we got going on. Oh, and you can also find me here at circworks.com. And then I was just showing Dan these before the show. I've been publishing some books, and these kind of go in tandem with my series, Making Comics 101. But this is Make Your Own Comics. So basically, I've got a lot of these, like this one is blank comic book panels. So it's just a book filled with all kinds of comic book panels you can use for layouts or anything you like. And then in the beginning, let's see, there's some, let's see if I can find it here. There's some tutorials and stuff in the beginning and everything. And then I've got some that have word balloons already in there and like caption boxes and things like that. I've got some that have sound effects, and then I've got some that are comic book layout pages where you can lay out your comics. And these are fairly new. I've got these Make Your Own Heroes. So I'll show you these off here real quick. So basically, it's just character turnarounds. There's a male and female here. So you can, you can design your own characters from different angles, your own superheroes or whatever. I've got this one here that's got just the front view, but it's got all these stats. You can list, secret identity, team affiliation, base of operations, all this stuff. And I just got these in today, so I just got a chance to check these out. But I also have these smaller manga versions. So if you want to work it more like a manga size, I've got these. And it's pretty much the same, only smaller. The only one thing that's kind of cool and kind of different is on the one with the sound effects, it's got both Japanese, it's got English on one side and Japanese on the other. So that's kind of cool. So you can find these if you go to, they're just right now, they're not on my website. They're just on Amazon. So if you go to amazon.com/shop/Circworks, and there'll be a link to my books there. So that's what I've been working on. So what about you, Josh? What's going on with you?
So I'm Joshua Kemble. You can check me out at joshuakemble.com. Quarterlystories.com will take you directly to the comic that I wrote about my journey with finding faith and dealing with mental illness. And it's a comic I've handwritten, hand-lettered, hand-inked, and will be handing to you pretty soon in print. But until then, every page of the first book is available for your reading enjoyment on quarterlystories.com. So other than that, just basically formatting that book while we talk. So hopefully it'll get finished pretty soon if I can figure out this whole KDP hurdle. So yeah.
All right. So Dan has been waiting patiently. I know he's got some big, not news. I'm sure anyone that's on his channel has heard about this, but he's getting ready to launch something pretty big. So, hey, how's it going, Dan?
Great. You were wondering about my age. I'm 72. Don't look a day over 43, though. I'm actually working on a new graphic novel called Odyssey Inc. The Twin Bengals. It's like Indiana Jones meets the Rocketeer, just like a fun adventure series. I've been really busy working on that. That's why my Christmas tree is still up in the background. And yeah, I'm just a professional comic artist and illustrator, Artcasters fanboy. So I always feel very honored to be here. Thanks, guys.
Well, we like having you, Dan. So, and you can find Dan's his website's down here, and then you've got. I think I put the link to your in the description of the video. I put a link to your mailing list so people can get on that. And when you're ready to, when does the Kickstarter launch?
Oh, it will be on April 14th. If you go to danekis.com, you can actually get a free comic book, but I'm actually also going to be releasing a free preview of the comic through my newsletter as well. So
yeah, and if you're not familiar with Dan's work, it's pretty awesome. I mean, you can kind of get a glimpse of it from the thumbnail of this, but yeah, and the cover artwork that I've seen from the new comic looks great, and that's definitely so. I'll definitely be back in that because it's that I love that. I mean, I've got your other comics and stuff, but this one, I think the theme of it sounds like it's definitely up my alley because I'm one of those people that saw Rocketeer. I mean, obviously, I was familiar with the comic book, but I saw it in the theater and I loved it, and it wasn't a huge success. But I remember both me and my dad, we loved that movie, and I'm so glad that now it's kind of found the love that it deserves. So. And of course,
if anyone has a Disney Plus account, go watch The Rocketeer. Yeah. It's the best.
Yeah,
it's a great movie.
All right, Dan. So we were going to talk about improving your drawing skills. Now, this is something that's kind of fresh in my mind right now. Let me click this out. Okay, there we go. Get back to our names, and I'm just doing some behind the scenes stuff because for some reason Josh doesn't have controls of all these things, so I want to be able to watch the comments and stuff.
Yeah, I've been booted from the control room.
Yeah. So yeah, this is fresh in my mind because in this series that I'm doing, Making Comics, I'm trying to stay ahead of these videos because the videos that I put out on Monday, which are the main videos, are pretty highly produced and they take a long time to do. So I definitely don't want to fall behind. And then on Wednesday, I do sort of a workshop. And then on Fridays, I do like kind of a quick tip. But the ones on Monday take a lot of time. So I definitely don't want to fall behind. So I shoot those and edit those beforehand, quite a bit beforehand, a couple weeks if I can. And so the one that I just finished editing was on penciling. So that's coming up. That's the one I think a lot of people are waiting for. But I really didn't know how to tackle that because I can't do that in a 30-minute video. I mean, how do you teach somebody? You can't teach somebody how to draw. So I'm going to talk about some of the basics and things like that. But because that's fresh in my mind, and basically, kind of the only advice I could kind of give people is to, search out. There are channels that are just based on that center around just drawing and learning how to draw. And of course, there's other means, and we'll get into all this different stuff on how to improve your drawing and stuff. But it's something you've got to put the time in and really and work at it. It's not something that I can show you in the course of a 30-minute video, but it is a good topic to kind of it's a good topic, I think, to talk with other people about because everyone has different ways that they learn how to draw, different techniques or different practices that they have. So I'm curious, just as a roundtable, to kind of go around and to kick this off. What if I was to ask each one of you what your number one tip is for improving your drawings? What would you say? So I'll go with Dan first.
My number one is I just came up with a name for it. I call it the draw this in their style technique. So basically what I do is I pick artists I would like to maybe emulate some aspect of their style in my own. And then I'll think about, well, what's something I would have fun drawing, like one of my characters or something. And then I say, well, what if I had to draw this in this other artist's style? So for instance, I've been studying Rene Gruot, who's like a fashion illustrator. And I've just been taking illustrations of his that I admire, saying, what if it's kind of like doing a master copy in a sense, but you're remixing it, into your own. So I would just say, if I was to draw some of my characters in the style of this artist's illustration, how could I do that? And then as I'm drawing it, I put my own spin on it. But the key is, like, you're comparing your art to people who are better than you, basically. And I'll be the first to admit I'm still developing as an artist. So it's like I'm not an expert on this at all, even though I'm a professional. But yeah, you'll notice a lot of little things like Frank Cho is a comic artist I studied, and he has just beautiful like line weight in his characters. So I would notice like the outlines of his characters would be bolder lines, but inside the silhouette, he would do thinner lines.
Mm-hmm.
I started implementing that with my work. And when you just compare your work to other artists who are like a little bit ahead of you in the journey or way ahead of you in the journey, you start to notice what are they doing differently than you with their colors, with their line weight, the rendering, brush strokes, what types of brushes, all that kind of stuff. That's the fastest way I found to improve. So.
Okay. What about you, Josh?
So for drawing, I mean, it's cliche and all, but it's like learning to see. And like, I think a lot of that comes with just consistent life drawing and studying anatomy and just kind of doing the hard work of like learning how to draw what you see. And you'll get better working stylistically. You'll get better working in whatever style you want. When you actually know what you see and are able to replicate it. And that's a hard thing to do. But what's cool is like, once you get fluid with it, like at first it's very geometric and rigid, and you'll find yourself doing a lot of like this stuff, when you're drawing, like you put up the pencil and you're like, is that like, trying to measure everything. But there's this point where like drawing will click, and once you kind of understand the structure and stuff like that, you can get into this like gestural form of drawing where you really capture pretty accurately and fairly quickly like the human figure or the landscape or whatever it is that you're looking at. And I think those skills, like the nice thing is those follow you anywhere and to any style and to any program. And that's actually one of those weird skills that like, no matter what software changes or what, the medium is, like that still underlies everything. So, so that's the key, is like just learn how to see, learn how to judge distance when you're seeing it, like, learn the symmetry on the human body. So you'll know like these little markers on like the eyes, right? So like if my face is tilted this way, like this side of my face, even though it's symmetrical with the other side, is going to be shorter than this side. And there's a dividing line like right here. Just knowing those lines, knowing the like beautiful line here that really helps you be able to nail somebody's nose. And not just that, like this little structure tells you everything about the angle of the head. And it's like, just little basic things that you learn from just doing the hard work of sitting down and drawing models live. And you can do it on the screen all you want, but that's a lot easier of a challenge because, right, you're copying something that's flat and you're translating it to flat. But learning how to translate something dimensional and know what you're seeing and translate it effectively, I'd say that's the number one thing. So just, I guess the basic point of that is just draw a ton. Like if you're not drawing all the time, like you're not going to get good at drawing.
Yeah, I mean, practice. I mean, you got to keep doing it. I would just kind of piggyback a little bit off of what you guys are saying, what Josh is talking about. My thing, and this is something that was really sort of, you talked about things clicking, and I think things finally clicked for me when I started to look at things as shapes and sort of these building blocks. So and I'll talk about this in the video, and so I'll just show this diagram again. You can sort of see this figure here, over here. Here he is. He's made up of spheres and cubes and cylinders. And once you see that, you can kind of see the proportions. And again, like also what Josh was talking about, I can't see over here with the human face and how everything lines up on that line and all that kind of stuff. Because I've seen, I mean, it's real basic. Once you learn that, it's like you can self-correct yourself. Because a lot of times when you're drawing, if you can in your mind, if you can picture a face. I mean, drawing a flat face is one thing, and some people even have sometimes problems with that. Like you'll see sometimes people's ears are kind of up a little high; they're not quite lined up with their head. Now, obviously, as your head tilts, that changes. But if
my favorite mistake everyone makes, even seasoned artists, is like you can easily spot this, and this is a challenge for everyone out there because you can probably find it on my site and maybe all of ours.
Yeah.
But if the artist didn't draw a through line, it's just a line right here. The eyes usually end up like that.
Yeah. And they're
balanced. And you'll see it across the board. Like you can instantly go, oh, no through line.
Yeah, and it's so easy. That's the first thing I do when I draw a face is I draw that X, I draw that through line. And when you're, like I said, when you're able to visually in your mind kind of tilt that, you'll know that as you tilt the head, that through line is going to kind of curve. So if I curve my head like that, I know that that through line is going to go like that. So, if I curve my head, but my eyes are still straight, that's not doesn't look right. So if you can picture as a sphere with a line around it, and then in your mind you can rotate that and keep everything lined up to where they're supposed to be. There's another thing, and of course when you're getting into more cartooning, you can play around with this a little more, or like when you're drawing like big anime eyes or whatever. But just knowing that there's a eye space in between these two eyes, because sometimes you'll have eyes that are way too far apart. And again, you can use that a little bit to a certain effect if you're trying to create a certain look for a character, or if you've got like a real cartoon character with beady little eyes, that's different. But and then on the side, there's probably about an eye space from here to where your ears are too. So just little things like that, measuring, using different parts of your body to kind of figure out where things fall into place. That can be real helpful as far as like in comics where the head is, or the body's like 8 heads tall, I think. In real life, it's probably closer to like 7.5. But using those measurements, you can kind of figure out. But I struggled with that, and I still do. I mean, everyone struggles with anatomy, but I got to the point where I knew about how long an arm was, that the forearm and everything, and then I could kind of correct that. And once you start doing that, then once you learn how to look at everything as shapes, you can start to figure out how to draw everything. Like cars are real complicated for me, but when you realize it's just a series of boxes and what do you call them? Like
3D forms.
Yeah, 3D forms, but like wedges and things like that. Then it becomes a little bit easier. So I guess that would be what sort of clicked for me is learning those things. And you also have to watch out, because if you just start straight with drawing these shapes, your figures can start to look a little stiff. So you also want to you want to do your life drawing and your gestures, these quick drawings and everything, and get that fluidity too. And when you combine those things, when you've got the motion and everything, and then you can kind of start filling in. And it's just this, it's like a building process. Like you put in those basic shapes, and then like say your nose is made up of more of those basic shapes. Once you start to see those, and you can build that, then you can go in and smooth it all out, and it starts to come together. So, and of course we're just talking about figures right now, but like anything, like mountains are made up of these same things, like cylinders and like tree trunks, or cylinders as well. So I mean, you can kind of see that stuff in pretty much everything that exists. So yeah,
I got this series of books. It was called The Famous Artist School. It was a school run by like Norman Rockwell, Austin Briggs, all these like old school illustrators, like the old masters from the 20th century. And that's like the first lesson that they teach you in these books is form is the basis of good drawing. So everything is 3D forms. Just think about that all the time. And a great book actually, besides Scott's, would be one called Figure Drawing, Design and Invention, that really helped me understand anatomy really well. Like you guys were saying about through lines on the face. I've never forgotten that since looking at that book, and it just teaches you, like, you draw a sphere, cut the sides off, and then pull the jaw down. So it makes it real easy.
Yeah, there's I got it on, I've got like a list of books on my Amazon wish list, and there's one, I forgot who wrote it, but it's human anatomy, but it's kind of color coded. So you can kind of see, I forgot who wrote that one, but that's one that I've been wanting to get for a while, because it makes a lot more sense when you can kind of see each muscle separate from each other and see,
Mhm.
you know, all color coded and everything. So that, there's a lot of great anatomy books. I mean, I think the episode that I'm going to premiere on Monday, I deal with reference, and those anatomy books are a big part on that. So, but I guess it's talking about references. What other references would you guys recommend as far as to help you with your drawing and stuff?
References as in
It can be books, it can be anything. Like for me, I just started going back and doing life drawing. So obviously live models and stuff.
Yeah.
I've been doing every, I think, second Monday of the month there's a drink and draw with it's a clothed model.
Mhm.
So just go there and draw different figures, and it's something I haven't done in a while, and I know going in there I can definitely use the practice, and I've never been huge on realism, so sometimes I struggle with that. My character, my sketches tend to look a little cartoony,
Yeah.
but I like cartooning, so I guess that doesn't. But it's always good to help stay sharp, and you're always gonna be learning, so it doesn't matter how long you've been drawing it. You always want to continue to learn and improve. So
I will definitely second figure drawing groups. I was thinking the same thing, because a lot of artists don't realize that that's a thing you can do. But if you live near like a major city, Google figure drawing groups and then the name of your city. And there's I live in Pittsburgh, which isn't a huge city, and we have a ton that I didn't even know about. I just found out recently from a friend. And I've been wanting to get back to the one, but yeah, and they're very supportive. Every time I've gone to those kind of groups, there's people of all different skill levels, so they're very accepting. You don't have to feel insecure, like, oh, these people are going to judge my drawings. Everyone's just there to practice and have fun and support each other. So that's definitely a good resource for sure.
Yeah, I think another really good thing that might actually be even more helpful than like figure drawing in a setting where you have like a model posing, holding perfectly still for you, is just to go in a crowded area, which unfortunately right now might be really hard with the whole coronavirus scare.
Yeah.
But
I've done that at airports, but that's probably, like you said, it's probably not a great thing to do.
But seriously, just sitting on a bus, like if you're stuck at the DMV, like maybe even if you're not going to the DMV, just go sit at the DMV. You're going to have crowds of interesting, weird people who are frustrated, making really interesting poses, and you can just draw all day. Like the jury duty, like any scenario where you have a lot of people waiting, which most of us just spend like on our phones or whatever, or like just playing a game or something. That's the time to draw, because people aren't going to hold still for you, which is actually equally important. So you need like a mix of that, like that sitting posed, like well lit thing, but also try to like capture somebody as they walk by. Like, can you sketch them real quick? The better you get at that kind of thing, like honestly, that's really been one of the most helpful things to me. Like this is actually so this is just a sketchbook I have. So this is just a page I did during jury duty, just looking at the weird, interesting people, and like trying to get the chairs and the perspective and stuff. And this is just a sketchbook. It's nothing like special, but it's like this kind of thing keeps me, informed, like for when I'm doing stuff, even using photo reference and stuff, because like if you're using photo reference and you don't know what you're drawing from, you'll make a lot of mistakes that a lot of people use, that a lot of people do when they're only using the photo and they don't know the form behind what they're referencing. So like that's the key, like what you guys were just talking about with form. It's like, like stuck at a hotel, like on a trip to Seattle. So I just, sketched out the window. It's like that kind of stuff. It's it's honestly like the most valuable stuff you can do.
Yeah, so keep a sketchbook is definitely, you know, a good tip too. And
What's that, Scott?
I was just gonna say I'm real bad about keeping up on a sketchbook. You know.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I'm so used to like drawing on like sheets of copy paper. But yeah, I've got a sketchbook, and sometimes I'll bring it around. Now I've got the iPad. Sometimes I'll do that too as well. But like when I brought my iPad to the drink and draw, and I did see one or two other people drawing on their iPad. But I don't know. I just feel like I should be doing that traditional there. I did want to. Let's see, where was it?
A sketchbook is good because it's always sitting around and it's easy to pick up because it's like a book that's sitting right there. It's like, I'll just pick it up and start doodling. And by the way, I'm just picturing Josh getting in trouble with the judge at jury duty. Like, are you paying attention, Mr. Kemble?
They're probably like, hey, we could use you as a court, what do you call it? Sketch artist.
Yeah, I know a guy who did that actually. Who does?
Oh, really? Yeah. Well, I know we've had Gary.
Gary Hodges. He does stuff like that.
He doesn't do sketch room drawings, but he does like diagrams for courtroom. Like
I think he does like murder scenes and stuff.
Yeah. It's really interesting.
It's amazing.
But so yeah, definitely keep a sketchbook. And I like when I did go to that drink and draw, that was the one thing that I wish it would be a little different, is because it's basically the model holds the same pose throughout the whole session, which I can see. And there were a lot of people that were there painting. So with that, I mean, it's like you can't. But I'm more partial to like the quick gesture drawings. And I know Ryan from Dream Syndicate said that he goes to monthly nude drink and draw. Now that I was curious about that one. If the reason why the one I went to had clothed models because there was alcohol involved. Not that I've seen anyone like drunk or like surly or anything at one of these things, but I just didn't know if that was something they just didn't do. But I was curious. They did mention there was another a nude session, but I didn't know if it was like a drink and draw as well. But that's interesting to know. But yeah, I mean, just go out. You can also, in addition to that, we're talking about drawing people and everything. And it doesn't have to be people. Architecture or like animals. Go to a zoo and sketch animals, and I mean, Disney artists do that all the time for the animal characters that they work on. Sometimes they'll even bring animals into their studio and they'll just sit there and draw and sketch and everything. So that's great. I think
reference yourself too, right? Like it's like you aren't always going to have a model. Like maybe sometimes you go out in public, you sketch people, they look at you weird, or you get annoyed with like the person who's like, oh, an artist, and you're like, I'm just trying to draw and not be looked at right now.
Yeah.
But you always have a mirror, right? And then one mistake I see a lot of artists make, though, when they do self-portraits that are like live self-portraits, once again, it's a little more important to do it to a mirror, or like you could do it, to a camera, but something about that keeps your face moving and stuff. So it's a little harder than just like shoot a photo and redraw it, right? The cool thing about that, but the mistake I see a lot with people is they don't take full advantage of it. So they'll draw themselves like straight on. And it's like, if you really want to challenge yourself, like just as an artist, like with your own sketchbook, like start drawing 3/4 views, where it's the hard angle. Try it from below, try it from all these different angles. Because like that's where you're going to really level up as an artist. If you just do dead on symmetrical shots of yourself, like when you're sketching in your sketchbook, it's not bad, but it's not necessarily gonna like up your skills depending on what you're trying to do. But also like what Scott was saying, I 100% agree. It's like, when you're out sketching, if people are walking and they're moving too fast, draw the background, draw the street lights. Like all of that stuff is gonna like come into play. One of my favorite like Robert Crumb was talking about why he uses photo reference, right? For his art. And he was talking about how when he does cityscape, without him, like he forgets to draw those weird like tubes and stuff that are on the side of buildings. And like, there'll be like some weird, pile of like, wires or something in the corner and just stuff you couldn't invent, And so, anyhow. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. And what you were talking about just drawing like flat angles, I'm so guilty of that with my comics. And I just started shooting more of my own photo reference. It's more time consuming, but I have a tripod, and you can get fun camera angles, man. You can like really push the perspective, even just with your phone. And also I would add to that is I look at drawing like learning a new language, essentially. So if you were learning a new language, if you didn't know how to say a certain word, you would ask somebody, right? Or you would look it up. It's the same thing with drawing. If you don't know how to draw the hand from a certain angle, either look it up or take the time, like Josh said, and shoot it on your phone, and you're going to start to fill that gap in your knowledge. And that's just building your visual vocabulary. So next time, you're going to know a little better how to draw the hand from that angle. You're going to understand the forms a little better, like we mentioned earlier. And if you don't know how to draw something, you can also look at how other artists draw those things. So like with my last comic series, I had to draw a lot of like desert mesas and rocks and things like that. So I was looking at Mobius. He did this Western series called Blueberry, where he drew mesas and rocks like that. And I'm like, I'll just draw them like Mobius did, but kind of put my own spin on it. Because I don't know how to draw rocks. If you show me a photo, like that was the thing I had trouble with doing line art, was like, I don't know where to put the lines. Which lines should I put down? How many? They talk about like line economy, only use the amount of lines that you need to just communicate what the form is. So look at how other artists draw things, where they place the lines. And that's a good indicator too.
Yeah. Also, depending on where you live, I mean, the environment, you can maybe use your own environment. Like I live out in the desert. So whereas like you and I used to, as a kid, I would read Calvin and Hobbes, and the seasons would all change and everything, and it'd get winter and everything. I thought that was so cool because we didn't really see that. But I could walk out my backyard and I could see the setting, not actually my backyard, but close enough, and see basically the scenery from like Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote or Crazy Cat and that kind of stuff. So just depending on where you live, you can take in those surroundings. You can learn to draw some of that,
Yeah, and also realize like that's one of the most iconic things about like Crazy Cat, like is the whole use of like the Monument Valley and stuff. It's just like it's this weird iconic landscape that's all throughout this comic, and it kind of became like a thing in itself, about the comic. So it's like it's not a bad idea to borrow from around you, or go to the place and bring a camera and take a lot of like location scout.
And I know because when in putting together the video on, I think it was the video on reference, I'm like, oh, I'm talking about going to a zoo, and then I'm like, I've done that before, but I was like, do I actually go to the zoo and take some pictures? And I'm like, you know what? I just went through my archives of vlogs and stuff that I did on YouTube, and I go, oh, there's some footage of me at the zoo. So I took that, and so I forget that I have some of this reference I have just from being on YouTube for so long and doing these little vlogs. I've got like stuff from when I went to ghost towns and things like that. So you could, that reminded me when I was there at these ghost. Sorry, my dog's throwing a ball around a baseball. But, so I've got like, I went to this ghost town and had like all these old tractors and stuff, and I was taking pictures of those. I mean, really cool stuff like that, old machinery and things like that. So take pictures of interesting things that you see around that may come into play later. Just don't forget you have it. If you can figure out a way to chronicle that stuff and organize it so you can find it if you need to.
Yeah. I would like to hear your guys' thoughts on developing a style. If you'd like to talk about that, just because I found that when I first started as an artist a few years ago, and I was horrible at illustration, like nowhere near a professional level. But I was really confused about like, well, what's my style supposed to be? How am I supposed to draw? Because you go on Instagram and online, and it's like you're bombarded with abstract art, abstract combined with figurative art. You're like all these different art styles. You're like, where do I fit in? So what I do is like I have a Pinterest board, and I'll just pin things that look like what's in my head, like the thing that I see in my head, like, yeah, I want to draw something like that. When I see it in the world around me, I bookmark it, you know what I mean? And save that all to like a mood board or a vision board. So you have that clear direction that you're moving in when you started drawing. Like, I want to do something similar to this style, like if you're still developing it, and that'll help you get closer to the mark. You know what I mean? It'll help you better translate what's in your imagination onto the page.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things I talk about in the first video I did. Then I will put out on penciling is style and everything. And I think, to me, I think a lot of, especially beginning artists, they're too focused on style and trying to find a style, when in fact, I think you need to get the basics down before you start worrying about your style. And I was guilty of that too. I was putting all these little hatch marks and things like that, and it just different things I seen other artists do. I was basically, it's basically like trying to paint a building that isn't constructed properly. You're putting the finishing touches on something when you haven't fully figured out what that thing is supposed to be to begin with. So I think if you're starting off, I think learning the basics before you try to figure out style. And like style, when I finally kind of got away from that, I realized that style just kind of found me. And I still don't recognize what I do as having a distinct style, but I've heard other people say, oh, I can definitely tell that you did that. So maybe I'm just too close to it, but I think eventually kind of finds you. And if you become competent enough, there are people like, Vincent DePorter, who we've had on plenty of times, who, he can do super fine art stuff, and then he can do on model like SpongeBob SquarePants and Scooby-Doo and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And just about everything in between. There's a few people like that are really good like that can do that. They can kind of flip from style to style. I can't really do that. I mean, I could try. I mean, if somebody asked me to draw SpongeBob and I had reference, I could probably pull it off, but it's not going to have the emotion and everything with somebody that knows how to draw it. Plus, he's drawn that character. He used to do the comics, so he's drawn that character a number of times. So that always helps too. The more you draw something, the better you get. Because in like jobs and things that I've had where, when I was doing video game design or stamp design or whatever it is, I was asked to draw all kinds of things that I normally wouldn't draw. Like I used, my previous, full-time job, I was doing stamps. I was doing everything, but a lot of what I was drawing was like, flowers and things. And I was never really any good at drawing flowers. Now I can draw like roses and stuff like that in my sleep. I don't even need to look at reference or almost any kind of flowers. I can just boom, boom, boom. So, and that even came in handy. And I think, well, flowers are kind of boring, but I was helping my son do some really cool, like, character designs for this game that he's designing. And he had these characters that were sort of flower people, not like hippie flower people, but, made out of flowers and different, like orchid face. And it really, that helped me to learn how to draw stuff like that. So all this little stuff that you think may not even need to draw. And that's the thing, because all three of us are comic book artists, and chances are we're going to have to draw pretty much anything. So the bigger variety of things that we can draw, the better you're going to get. Because once you draw something enough, it'll come around. It's just like, there's just certain things that I don't even need reference anymore because I've drawn them so many times. And sometimes I'll refer back and look, okay, make sure, like little things like that. But the more you draw something, the better you get. So just don't be afraid to draw all kinds of different things. Don't be afraid to, practice your perspective. Don't just draw. I mean, you can draw a comic that's this is not a good example because it's beautifully drawn, but like say Bone, where it all takes place in, pretty much in the outdoors. So there's not a lot of drawing buildings and things like that. It's beautiful. But if you're just drawing stuff like that, you may not be able to draw like, perspective. And I mean, there's some perspective in there, like if the guy's pushing a cart or something like that, but you might not be as adept at drawing like buildings and things like that. So stretch your creative boundaries or muscles or whatever, and draw different things.
And I like what you were saying about style and not necessarily being stuck on a style at the beginning, because when I used to teach college like classes in illustration, it's like there were a lot of kids who'd come in and they had a style that they were like adamant about, like, this is my style. And their style was not knowing anatomy, not knowing perspective, not knowing how to draw. And it wasn't a style so much as just ignorant, like stubbornness. Like when it came down to like, no, look, bring your style into it, whatever, cool, right? But you got to learn how to draw a face first. You got to learn how to draw figures first. You got to learn how to compose scenes first. Like, and be careful with the style thing. Don't use the style as a crutch, right? If the style is a crutch, that can be problematic. And you know, but like the second you have all those foundations down, if you then apply a style, I think Scott's right. Like it's going to kind of naturally happen on its own too. The other nice thing about that is it does help you be adaptable. And in my position, that's I think probably 90% of how I got the position I'm in as an art director is being able to shift styles. Like I can work, you know, mid-century modern, and then I can shift gears and work futurist. I can work like in pretty much any style you show me. I can deconstruct it and go, oh, okay, that's how that's built. I can do that. The only way you learn how to do that is by being kind of styleless at first and then, you know, moving towards your style. But I agree also what Dan was talking about, where like having a visual library of things you want to be your style would be good. But one thing also that I think is really cool is a lot of the time the style you arrive at may not even be the style you love. Like I love Jeff Smith stuff, but I've gone in a very different direction in most of my work than that. But I do love Jeff Smith. You know, I like a lot of like really cartoony stuff, like super cartoony stuff, loose. Like I like cartoon modern a lot. It's one of my favorite things on the planet, but you wouldn't see that looking at my art. And so that's, you know, it's like you can also pull influence from things that don't represent your style. And I think you kind of have to arrive at something that's, I think like Scott was saying, it's something that just kind of shows up, and a lot of the time you probably aren't even going to be aware of it by the time you're doing it. If you're too aware of it, you might be using it as a crutch. That's at least what I noticed with like a lot of art students, was because they draw like an eye that was off, and you'd be like, hey, the eye's off, and they're like, no, that's my style, man. And you're like, it's not.
Come on, man. Yeah, that's great. No, it definitely takes time to find, and it's okay to. It took me years, so of just exploring and doing studies of different artists and kind of finding my way, finding my voice, and also like we were saying, honing my skills and learning the fundamentals of like how do you actually just draw 3D forms in space and perspective. And while you're doing that, you're also building that seeing skill that Josh talked about when you're doing studies, when you're doing figure drawing, and just learning how to reverse engineer what you see and put it on the page. It's, yeah, the more that I think about that, since you said that, it really just, it makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, like when you start playing with like Scott's been delving into this recently too, like building custom type. I love playing with custom type. The second you start learning how to do type, a lot of it is like for custom type, you're deconstructing existing type to kind of figure out how the letters are built. And the second you start seeing, like, it's just like learning the human figure. You start seeing the anatomy, you start seeing the bones of the letters. And what makes them kind of cohesive and stuff, then you can build really cool custom letters. And a lot of that comes from just total reverse engineering of how the letter itself is built, and looking at other great typography and being like, how is this constructed? You know?
Yeah, because you can take a C and it's not that different from a G, uppercase, which isn't, you know, in that angle on the C. if you flip it, is not that different from a D. And I mean, we saw that. I kind of went crazy over that Dune logo. I don't know if we talk about that on air, if it was off air.
It is pretty. I think it was on there.
It's pretty amazing. It's basically a shape, almost like a U shape, but it's the D, the U, the N, and then the E, and then for the line in the E, it's kind of got this kind of lens flare type thing going through it.
Yeah.
It just makes so much sense, and it's just beautiful. And it's just the same shape repeated and flipped over and over. So I mean, stuff like that. That's the stuff that really, as far as design, like, just makes me go, wow, that's amazing.
Are you talking about David Lynch's Dune?
No. The new one that Denis Villeneuve that's coming out.
I
keep waiting for that trailer to come out because I just so excited.
It's cool, yeah.
Yeah, because he did, he did the new Blade Runner, and he did Arrival, and he's gonna do Dune, and I'm like,
dude, that's gonna be good then, yeah, for sure. There's this is a random thought I have. If I can throw it out there, it's okay to do bad drawings. That's another thing I found has helped me improve a lot. Is being okay with doing drawings that suck, because we all do them. And I think social media has played a role in like magnifying our insecurities as artists, because you go on someone's page and it's like everything on their page is like amazing, but you don't see all the crappy drawings they did behind the scenes. I post a lot of crappy drawings, so I hope that makes people feel better. But yeah, a lot of the stuff that people post on social media is just the highlight reel. It's just the good stuff. It's totally normal for professional artists to do bad drawings. I do them all the time, every day. I have to redraw stuff a lot because I'll draw things and it won't turn out right. I'm like, Dad, I have to fix that. I can't turn that in to the client.
So, Dan, do you watch Cartoonist Kayfabe?
No, I actually checked them out since you told me about them.
Yeah, because those guys are Pittsburgh natives too.
I emailed Jim Rugg. He's coming on my show.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. So, but they just did a show, and Ed Piskor kind of went back over and showed his drawings from childhood. And I've done that too. Actually, that was the first video that I actually posted that actually got a decent amount of views. For anything else was just me showing my old artwork from when I was a kid. That people like to see that. So don't think that just because you see all this beautiful stuff on Instagram that people don't want to see, kind of the raw and rough stuff too. Because it's inspiring when you can look at somebody who has a career like, say, Ed Piskor, who's done like Hip Hop Family Tree and all this stuff, and you can kind of see where he came from. And I mean, and I could even, just judging by the ages he was talking about, where he was, I was kind of laying my path over that. I kind of see, I was kind of where he was at this age, and then, but where he was here at this age, I might have been a little further, but then somewhere along the line, he surpassed me or whatever. So, you just gotta, everyone's got their own journey, and everyone learns at different paces and everything. So, it's, you gotta put in the time.
I think actually this is hitting on something that I think is really important to let, like, kind of people who are struggling as they're drawing, and it's always a struggle. It just gets a little easier, but then there's new challenges that become more of a struggle. So it's a lifelong struggle. But when you start struggling with it and being like, I'm the only person struggling with it, first off, you're not alone on that. Second off, understand you're gaining data that you'll then apply when you draw badly again. Because the trick is you never really get good at drawing. You just get better at learning how to correct mistakes and sometimes stop them before they happen. But the catch is, it's like you start learning some tricks to avoid mistakes. You're still going to make mistakes, but a lot of art is just knowing how to very quickly adjust and correct your errors. So, your first line is rarely going to be perfect. Your first drawing is rarely going to be perfect, and your 50,000th drawing is rarely going to be perfect. But you'll notice the guys who were really good just really quickly correct. I had this instructor once who was like a world famous life painter, and he did painting in this really cool, like wet on wet style in oil. And he kind of painted like Lucian Freud like later in his career, like this just really thick like paint on the canvas, but he just paint these like perfectly accurate portraits of people like within 5 seconds, and they were beautiful, right? Or a drawing of a model in just like 5 seconds. It was great. But you'd notice when he was working, he would sketch on the canvas with paint, right? And he'd just make a wrong line, and then he'd draw right over it with the right line. And it's like, and then he'd go back and draw over it with the right line again. He's just constantly readjusting the lines. And the neat thing is, and this is one real quick tip I give people, one of my favorite tricks to do when I'm sketching is to sketch with a pen. I don't like sketching with pencil, because when I sketch with pencil, I start erasing, I start kind of reworking. But the great thing about sketching with pen, especially if you're trying to draw people like walking really fast, is you have to kind of commit to the line you made. And if you messed up, you have to just draw over it and just ignore that it's there, that error. And that kind of thinking will get you to a right drawing way more than the new art student who like comes to the life drawing session and they have all the different gradients of pencils and they have those smudgy sticks that like no artist uses those smudgy sticks. The ones you sharpen and stuff. They have all the tools, right? But like then drawing an eye and spending hours on it and like smoothing, and it's like just get a pen and a piece of paper and just knock it out and see what happens. Because like what's weird is a lot of time if you're looser, you're less precious about it, and like Dan was saying, you're not worried about it being perfect. You can end up with much better art than like the tense, like every line has to be perfect.
And not even just the fact that pens are erasable, because I've done a while back I got somebody comped me some erasable pens and I tried those out, and even though if I needed to, and I didn't really use the eraser that much other than for effects, like if I go through and then maybe I'll do like a little effect with the erasing, which was kind of cool, but but just the fact that the way pens go down, they just go down a lot smoother and everything, and it just the way it glides and everything, it is really good for sketching too. So and then I don't know, when you have Jim Rugg on, you'll have to talk to him about his he does these ballpoint pen drawings that are really cool. So
his comics are gorgeous, man. They're so beautiful. He's a great there's a hip hop artist, Big Sean, and he has this line. It's something like what Josh was saying. It's something like there ain't no failure in life. There's only lessons. So that's always stuck with me. And I think I was just meditating on this evening, actually, before I started talking to you guys, was the path to get to where you want to go. So in this case, we're talking about the path of mastery as an artist, right? It's and it's not a neat path. It's very messy, and you'll make a lot of mistakes along the way. But like I was kind of I feel frustrated sometimes where I'm like, I'm not at my goal yet. I'm not where I want to be yet. And I was just thinking that this evening, and I'm like, I just had this voice come in my head, like, this is the path. This is what the path looks like. Like, you're on the path. You're moving towards what you want. You're moving towards becoming a better artist every time you do a bad drawing. That's just what the path looks like. And once you can make peace with that and be content with the fact that, like, look, it's all good. I'm on the path. I'm moving towards becoming a great artist. So
and I would say, I know some people that are ashamed of their old drawings and they'll like throw them away or whatever. Hold on to that stuff, because you talked about before, Dan, about not comparing yourself to these artists that are way better than you. Obviously you want to inspire to be like them, but compare yourself to where you were, say, 6 months to a year ago. Look back at that stuff, and if you see improvement, and if you are working, if you're honest about it, like if you put everything down and you pick it up again and you haven't done anything, and it's 6 months later and this stuff looks the same, well, that's a different story, because you really haven't put in the time. But if you're putting in you can't not get better if you're putting in the time. It's just like there's like no way. I just don't see any possible way where you could get worse. You can only get better. So. And the more time you put in, the better you're going to get. So that's kind of up to you.
Yeah, and just finding things that like you, like I was saying earlier about highlighting gaps in your knowledge. Also, just looking at sticking points that you have, particular things that you're just not very good at, and recognizing like, oh, I wasn't very good at drawing, faces back then, and I'm still struggling with certain aspects of that. That's clearly something I need to focus on. And that's something I'm always doing with my work, is looking at the things that suck, and doing my best to identify that. It's not a bad thing. A lot of people don't want to look at that, but I do. I'm like, I want to know so I can fix it. So
yeah, and it's also good to kind of be aware of your weaknesses, and obviously create work despite them, right? You should be creating work all the time, but it's like, note your weaknesses, try to target a weakness on your next project, and then on your next project try to shift gears and target a different weakness. And like, it's kind of like getting into a fight, right? When you're going to do art, you're getting in a war, and you're going to lose battles and you're going to win battles. And there's never going to be a 100% win record, right? Because it's war, right? There's going to be losses in the process, but it's like, you're going to learn different strategies as you do it. And then like, once again, when you're done, you want to reevaluate, be like, okay, what could I have done better? Where were my weak points? Like, what wasn't I planning out well? What wasn't I like hitting? Like what areas do I need to strengthen so that the next time I go into battle, I win. Right. And you're constantly going to be doing that, with like different equipment and different challenges, and hopefully advancing and gaining ground. But yeah, like I think the idea of a lack of growth in artists is just, that's a strange one, where people, I think they'll hit a peak and just be like, that'll be the sweet spot.
Yeah. Well, Dan had mentioned sort of that road to mastery, and I just don't see me ever getting to the point where I'm a master. I look at some these people that are at these like atelier schools. Just like the learning and the stuff that they're doing is just like, this, like, it's just something I don't think I could ever attain. But to be honest, I don't know that doesn't interest me as much as just drawing comics and the stuff that I'm doing. It's putting that into perspective too. You don't have to be this beautiful, say, wildlife painter or something like that. I'm content with, I'm never content, but I love comics, and that's the look that I'm going for. But when I see people doing other things, other forms of art, I'm in awe of it, but it's not necessarily something that I aspire to do. So
yeah, two things that makes me think of. The first one is, I had this dream a few years ago when I was like first starting off as an artist, and because I'd been thinking about like painting and things like that. I still want to do painting. I remember I had this dream where like my old neighbor was in it, and he just came. He was like, it's my friend's granddad. He's my friend too, though. So he's like this wise old man. He appears in my dream, and he's like, you'd be surprised what you could paint if you tried. And it's like, that always like stuck with me. Like, wow, like if I just put in the effort and put in the work, imagine what I could accomplish. So Scott, you could paint like those people if you wanted to, for sure.
Yeah, but, and things may change. There, I may get to a point where like, you know what, I really want to go all in on painting.
Yeah,
definitely an area that I'm not confident in. So
right. The other thing that makes me think of too, though, is I was listening to some podcasts recently on some modern artists like Warhol and Jean-Michel Basquiat, famous painter. And Basquiat is such an inspiration to me because this guy, if you look up his work, it's just like really noisy, messy. He was a graffiti artist originally, and then transitioned into painting, became this like rock star in the modern art world. One of his paintings, he's dead now, but one of his paintings sold for the highest selling painting ever for over $1 million.
Mhm.
But you look at it and it's just like this scrambled mess of paint strokes. And I think the modern art world has a healthy attitude about creation, and they see things like that and they say, look, this is something so pure that came out of this guy. It was just him expressing himself. Like, sure, we want to improve our skills, but at the same time, if you can learn to look at what you're creating, everything you put on paper is a modern art masterpiece, because it's technically good enough to hang in a modern art gallery, right? So, and it's an analogy I actually used in a recent video I did on my YouTube channel was like if a kid, if Josh, you have kids, this might hit home for you. If your kid did a drawing for you, you wouldn't care about the technical aspects of it. You would probably just be in awe that this person created something, pure and expressed themselves in this way.
I like the lack of technical stuff.
Yeah, you would hang it on the fridge. You would hang it up to display. And I feel artists should have the same level of love and respect for their own work, and say, look, yes, this isn't perfect, but it's beautiful because it came out of me. This is what my soul is calling me to do in this life. So therefore it is beautiful.
Yeah, and I think you're actually touching on something good, which is I think when you're an artist, you should be looking to make art that is kind of somehow expressing your soul. And because I think otherwise, like, you can make really beautiful stuff that you 3 years later are going to be like, meh. But the stuff I feel best about in my career that I did like 15 years ago was stuff that I really poured into. The other stuff is like, meh, I made some money on that. That was cool. But it's like you don't get the same kind of longevity from it for yourself, for your own self-satisfaction. So I do think, I do think in order to retain that like childlike thing, you got to really put something into it. And it doesn't have to be, immense skill, but at least some heart and some intent and, purpose in there. I think that enriches all art. And I can also attest to that from teaching too. Like when I used to teach college illustration, like you could tell when a student just could not give a crap about what they were working on. It could even be beautifully executed, and you just look at it and be like, this is really boring, And why were you bored looking at it? Because they were bored drawing it. And it's like, so keep that in mind when you're creating. Like if you're bored drawing something, chances are your audience is going to be bored. If you're psyched about it, the chances are they might be psyched about it. But you can't expect people to get psyched about something you were bored with, or, so yeah, I totally agree with that kind of idea. So yeah, confident in your work, but make work that is worth confidence, like meaning, that put some soul into,
For sure. I don't know if you saw Jim Lujan's new film, All That Glitters.
Oh, yeah. But he's going to be on next week.
What's that?
He's going to be on the show next week.
Oh, dude, his new film was amazing, man. And that's what that made me think of. Like, you could feel his passion for filmmaking. And it's like, and the thing I love about Jim's work, it's so like low budget indie. It's not polished like a mainstream animated film. But when you watch it, you're like, dude, this is high art. Like, this is like next level. This belongs in a museum, dude. Like, this is some next level stuff.
It's amazing.
Yeah. He's like the Tarantino of animation to me. It's like, man, knows what he's doing. But
yeah, so he'll be on 222. So we'll mention that.
Yeah, he specifically requested to be on episode 220.
Like it was like 10 episodes. We both got a text. I'm like, sure, you can have 222.
That's great. Did we cover everything?
Well, we still got a little time. I'd like to keep it around an hour and a half, but I know there were some things in chat we didn't get to, so I'll just kind of go through and
let's talk.
So Corey had said Google Earth is great for background reference. Yes, I mean, it's just amazing when you can go and you can do a view of New York and spin that thing around.
I've done that.
Yeah. And I don't be afraid to trace it, and then, trace it, but then add your own little details to it, but get the structure. I would do that, especially in a pinch, because here's the thing, and I know up and coming artists don't want to hear this, and it's probably good that they don't, because I think, you obviously need to learn to draw in perspective and everything, but if you know that, and because we're all professionals, we all have deadlines and things, there's nothing wrong with taking some shortcuts and things like that, and that's one great thing you can do, is just take a Google printout. And the good thing is it's not going to be like you're taking reference at somebody, like a still reference that somebody's using. You can move that thing around, so it's still going to be, you're not going to see that same angle, that same view in somebody else's comic. So yeah, that's something that's really cool. And I was doing that with Young and the Dead. I actually went out and the previous issue I did, I had to draw this kind of clandestine type science laboratory building, and I actually went out and I went to just different buildings, and I didn't want it to be like super high tech or fancy. I wanted to be sort of nondescript. So I was just, I found these interesting buildings, and I just didn't take a shot of one building, but I took a shot of a number of buildings. I'm like, oh, I like that from this one and this one. And then again, going back to the same thing with the figure, once you understand, you can come up with the basic building blocks, pretty much cubes. And then you can take, oh, I like this kind of windows over here, or this foyer or whatever you call it, and just change things around, and then you've got your own original thing. So yeah, Google Earth is pretty awesome. I haven't used it in a while, but yeah, that reminds me that I should be doing that more. And the same thing with, because the last comic I did, I had to draw this big freeway scene, and and I tried to, I just did, at first I was just doing the regular Google search, but it just wasn't the shots I wanted wasn't there. So you can go on Google Earth and do that, and if you can go down and see, if you have certain angles of an overpass or whatever. It's really amazing. So let's see what else we got. You got any other? Feel free to, drop in some questions.
There was somebody who was on as some person who asked me to say "Kneel before me, son of Jor-El." So I guess I
missed that one. How did I miss that one? Let's see.
I know you stole the Codex Cal.
So yeah, no, there's stuff in here. All right. Well. All right. So what haven't we covered as far as, we've talked about reference, we've talked about obviously just practice and things like that. Do you want to get into we can, this is another thing. I'm giving away some of the stuff I'm talking about when I get in my pencils, but another thing is because the first video that I'm going to put out is basically kind of getting those things out of the way that people worry about too much. First one being style, the next one being tools, but kind of with the disclaimer that tools don't make the artist. You have the best tools in the world, it's not going to automatically mean you can draw better. But are there any tools and things that you use that you think helps make you a better artist?
Perspective grids.
Okay. What do you use for perspective grids? Because I've got a lot of old school, back when my first art job was as a doing architectural renderings, and I've got old school ones that were actually drawn out by hand, and they're massive. They roll out. You put them on your drawing table and all that stuff. But well, I got my answer of what I use as far as modern tools go. But what about you, Dan? What do you use?
I found a video a few years ago from some DC Comics artist, and he had a downloadable template.
Okay.
Photoshop, and but I have it as just a thing. I just cut and paste into my documents. You can lower the opacity.
Okay.
And I'll just draw buildings. It's mostly for buildings and things like that, or cars. like anything that's very geometrical, stuff like that.
Do you ever use Clip Studio Paint?
No, I haven't. No.
I will tell you right now, the perspective tools in that program will rock your world. There, I mean, it's like you set it up so everything will like click to the line. So everything. I mean, it's just like when I used it when I was doing the anthology, and like once you figure out, it took me a little while to kind of, because it's hard. It was hard for me to put myself in that kind of 3D space. But once I figured that out, I mean, one's fairly easy, but 2 and 3 point perspective. I mean, and everything lines up, and it's just like you just draw away, and everything goes into perspective, and it's amazing. It's a game changer.
Oh yeah,
it's incredible. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we should throw it over to Josh, but I would say my only other big thing is just reference. Like again, if you don't know how to draw something, shoot some reference on your phone, look up some reference online. Especially like with environments or character poses, it's just going to make your drawing so much better. Because when I draw from the imagination, I suck. I'm so bad. I'm not that great, but I can find a good photo and draw off of it, or I can take a good photo of myself posing in a certain way and draw that, and it makes it a lot better. So
yeah, I mean, that's a skill in itself. I mean, I can't, like, just sitting here when I was at the live drawing, I was trying to capture this woman's face, and what I did, I think it looked good. It looked like a person, but it didn't look so much like that person. So, but yeah, so it's not easy just even to look at reference and kind of draw what you see. So that takes a lot of practice. But if anyone is interested in reference, I think Monday, that's what I'm gonna. My Making Comics 101 series, that's what we're going to talk about next week is reference. So, so I'll be covering all that kind of stuff. And some of the stuff we talked about here, but there's all kinds of other really cool sources for reference that I use. And I'll probably when I do my bonus video, kind of my exercise, I'll probably just go into how I use Pinterest, because that's an amazing program for like, organizing all these different references and things like that. So, yeah, definitely.
Oh, Gary, or I think it's Gary in the chats was saying you sold him on getting a rolling ruler. I wonder.
Oh yeah, that was the video I just put up. Was it today or yesterday? This week we're talking about panel borders. So I showed, and that's a really cool tool, that rolling ruler, because before, like, I had the drafting table with the the thing that went down on the guides and everything, and all that stuff, and that rolling ruler, pretty much,
rolling ruler, man, it's all about the metal wheels on that thing.
Oh yeah, the good one. And I specifically said you got to get the good one with the metal. And I think Josh was the one, because I saw Josh using it, and I had one before that I used that was, I got it off of I had it when I was a kid, like, and at that point I thought that was the coolest thing, but it would shift, and it was plastic. The whole thing was
plastic one with the little tube in the middle, right?
Yeah. And yeah, that one, it was cool is cool how it worked, but it shifted too much, and it kind of got messed up with that. The one with the metal wheels and everything.
Can I give a shout out? Salazar Art Nation. They commented, because I posted about this hangout earlier, and they commented on that. So shout out to them. And they want to know, Making Comics 101, is that an expensive course?
He knows it's not. Like, he's like one of my biggest supporters. So
okay.
That's Frank. But yeah, he's always helping me promote it. So he'll put out questions like that, like, no, it's totally free. So he sets it up, and I pitch.
Puts them up, you knock them down.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, I think I feel like we've covered a ton, because but I do think reference is a good thing too, because a lot of people try to just go straight to drawing from their head and get frustrated that what they're drawing from their head doesn't feel like reality. And a lot of the time it's just like, no, you need like a ton of reference. And then like somebody had mentioned the drawings for in the chats for I believe oh my gosh, the Jungle Book, and they were talking about, I think it was Milt Berle or Milt Carl.
Oh yeah, okay. There was a couple. I think that was Philip Chandler.
Oh, yeah.
He has a couple of comments that I want to get at before we. That's the one I was looking for and I lost it. But yeah, here it is. Here it is.
Oh, go ahead. There we go. Yeah, and Milt Carl animated the cats in the Jungle Book with no reference because he spent years prior to it studying animals. So
yeah, so actually he did have reference, but he drew off of those references enough times that he didn't need them anymore.
And that's the catch. Yeah. Like, a lot of people want to draw like Milt Carl. And by the way, also Philip corrected Milt Carl's name on the second post after that. But yeah, like a lot of people want to draw like that. Like they grow up watching cartoons and they want to draw like that, and they don't realize like Disney animators draw from life all the time. Like, you know, Snow White, it's like you can look back at all the physical clips of like they had models, they did actual live film, and then they animated based on that and based on those live figures. So they weren't wholesale inventing those characters from their head. And then a lot of the guys, like the 9 Old Men, who got to the point where they could wholesale create those out of their head, had drawn from reference for so long that it was just it was like stored in a memory bank. Mm-hmm. So that's a really important thing for, you know, young artists to know when they're starting to draw, because like you said, it can be frustrating. And I also remember as a kid, like, you know, not being able to draw eyes and then just filling a page full of drawings of eyes over and over again for like 4 hours. I would just draw eyes, and then a week later I did that every day, and then it's like, oh, I can draw eyes, and then you tackle the next thing, right? So you know, that's part of the journey. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like talking about drawing the cats from Jungle Book, I mean, that's the other thing. Like, you know, I remember a time before I started working in animation that I really didn't draw many animals at all, and you know, and then was a point where I had to, so I had to, you know, draw that. And once you realize that, you know, if you can draw a dog, you can probably draw a cat, you can probably draw a horse. I mean, there's differences, but there's a lot of similarities too. So once you kind of see how, you know, how that works, and there's actually similarities to humans as well, you know.
Which is why I study anatomy. Yeah, and you can take an anatomy class like at a college where you can actually see real bones, real muscles, real bodies. Like, it's literally one of the most enlightening things you will ever be able to do as an artist, because you'll actually know what you're drawing, what's creating the folds. It's why it's so important to draw new models. Like, I know, like, there's some people who are super conservative and are like, oh no, nudity, but it's like, you're never going to draw folds right until you know what a nude form looks like. And then you'll be able to draw clothes. You'll know how that clothes hangs. You'll know what the muscle is that's causing that fold. Like, all of that stuff, it's super important. So
yeah. A couple other things I'll run through real quick before we go out. So Philip Chandler also says he has Clip Studio, but hasn't tried the perspective tool in it. Yeah, give it a shot. It's really amazing. I can't recommend it enough. And this one, I had never heard this. Have you guys heard that the Look at the Little Mermaid was inspired by Alyssa Milano?
I didn't hear that.
Yeah,
a good book though. A good book I'd actually recommend is it's called Dream Worlds, and I forget the artist's name, but he worked for visual development for a ton of Disney films, Beauty and the Beast, Mulan, and I was just watching Mulan because I've been on an animated film kick lately, and the backgrounds in that are beautiful, and you know, they sent these artists to China to paint mountains, and we're out there. The Prince of Egypt, one of my favorite animated films, they had background painters in the mountains painting mountains and doing studies like that. And that's why that film is so beautiful. So yeah, just another thing on reference. But Dream Worlds, beautiful book, very good for visual development.
Yeah, look into that. Another one is Skillful Huntsman. You guys seen that?
No, I gotta write that down.
Yeah, the Skillful Huntsman is basically, it's an art of book for a movie that doesn't really exist. They basically took like this old fairy tale and made it into a sci-fi movie. So it's every step of developing a sci-fi movie, but the movie just doesn't exist. It's just like a huge exercise. And you get to see all the different character designs. But it's really cool because usually when you look at an art of book, you see the finished product and you can kind of see, oh, that's kind of where they were going with this one. But this one, it's like you by the end of looking through this whole book, you're still imagining like, oh, I want to see this thing on the screen. Why isn't this actually made? So it's a really cool book.
I have seen this before.
Yeah.
I
show it off in the reference. I think I show some of it off in the reference episode coming up. So yeah, definitely check that out. But I got always a fan of Anastasia. Yeah, that one was actually shot here in not shot, but design. It was produced here in Arizona back when Fox Studios was here. So actually, I didn't work in animation at the time, but I was in children's entertainment, and sorry, my dog's biting me. But the place where I was shooting I had a live action children's show that I was shooting. The place where I was doing it, they would actually go there, and then they would do some of their not like, I don't think they were doing motion capture yet, but just like setting up a scene and having actors and then having that, capturing that and having the animators look at that. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah. Another thing on that is for my new series I'm working on, Odyssey Inc. Upcoming story arc is set in like a New Orleans inspired city. So I actually went to New Orleans in January.
Oh, cool.
It was so fun, man. And I recommend, if you can do that, you can plan a pretty cheap trip if you're not traveling too far, and you're only going for a day or two. But being in that city, there's a character to it. Mm-hmm. There's something about, like, because I live in Pittsburgh, good New Orleans, there's palm trees. All the plants are different. The smell is different. Everything smells like fish. It's like, it's weird. Yeah. People are eating gator.
I've had gators, yeah.
There's certain things that you can't capture unless you've been there or experienced something. So, like Josh was saying about drawing people in life and going out and drawing real things. Mm-hmm. It's not even just the basic geometric things that you're drawing. It's the character of the place itself, the mood and the emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was saying that Princess and the Frog takes place in New Orleans, and it's got a lot of that look to it too. It's really cool and definitely underrated.
Yeah.
All right, so what do you say we wrap it up and we kind of go around the table again?
Sure.
All right, so do we want to go? We go with Josh first then.
Sure, sounds good. So if you've enjoyed this, stay tuned, because Scott is going to tell you how to subscribe for it. But in the meantime, check out joshuakemble.com and go to quarterlystories.com, where you can see my comic about my journey with faith and mental illness that I've handwritten, hand-lettered, hand-inked, and will be handing to you hopefully someday in print, which should be pretty soon. But I've spent like about 5-ish years on it, 5 or 6 years. So wrap it up, and you guys should check it out. So yeah.
It's good.
I can't wait. Another thing I can't wait for is your Kickstarter, Dan. So you want to talk about that?
All right. April 14th. Give me all your money. I have a new graphic novel called Odyssey Inc. The Twin Bengals. It's fun action adventure a la The Rocketeer or Indiana Jones. If you're interested in that, go to danekis.com. You can get a free comic book and when you sign up for my mailing list, and I'll send you the link when the campaign is live. And also, if I could just say one thing in closing, like we were talking about the concept of mastery earlier. Mastery to me is not a destination, it's a path. So if you draw with the intent to improve your skills, you are a master. That's all you have to do. And creative genius, it's not something you are, it's something you have inside you. So believe in yourself and just create,
Yeah, and if you want more of those kind of words of wisdom, definitely check out Dan's channel. Get on his newsletter, because he's got tons of that. You know, before you were putting like I think you're putting out like emails all the time, and it was just always so inspirational. So yeah, definitely check out Dan's stuff. And as far as me, you can find me at circworks.com. Also, like I said, if you go to Amazon/shop/circworks, I've got my whole series of stuff for drawing comics and manga and stuff like that. That's all there. And yeah, as far as this thing that we do here, the Artcasters, we do it every week. It's usually Josh and myself. And hold on one second, let me turn that off. Okay, there we go. Josh and myself, and we always have a guest. Like I said, we kind of previewed next week will be Jim Lujan, which is an amazing animator. Definitely want to check that out. But yeah, and we do it every week, and it's usually on Thursdays, but it can be a different time if you want to know exactly when it's going to go live and everything. And sometimes there's tricky things like time changes, which I wasn't aware of because I live in Arizona and I didn't know that there was a time change. And also StreamYard does not understand the difference between, it says mountain time, so I set it for 10 mountain, and it doesn't understand that I'm not on mountain time right now because I'm in Arizona. so at first I put 10 and it said it was going to start like an hour later, and I'm like, no, so I had to change it. But so I got to deal with stuff like that, but it gets confusing. But if you don't want to be confused, the easiest thing to do is just join our mailing list for the Artcasters. We don't spam you or anything. Just usually 30 minutes before we go live, we send out a newsletter with a link to where you can click on here and watch us live or get involved in the chat. And with that, I just want to thank everyone in the chat. You guys had a bunch of great questions and great comments and things like that. And we always appreciate that. So yeah, if there's not any other quick last words that anyone wants to say, then we'll close this thing out.
I want to give a shout out to Philip because he said, "I'm glad you guys do this. I feel like I'm not alone listening to this, and we're glad you guys join us in the chat."
Yeah.
All right,
stay healthy. There's a pandemic going on.
yeah, we got to do more of this virtual stuff.
Hell yeah.
So, all right. We will see everyone next week. And yeah, take it easy.
Namaste.